The Sentinel is known to be reliable, fearless, disciplined, consistent, courageous, motivated, and skillful.
So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances.
All these qualities start from the mind. Your mind can be your worst enemy or your most powerful weapon.
The world becomes your library to help you to become better at your craft.
Is this the dagger?
Learn how to achieve greatness and tap into the Sentinel mindset.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome on this wonderful, wonderful day today. We have a very amazing guest today, someone that we've actually had a little bit of time to, find out about more and do some work with, and that is Stacy Gallant. Now, who is Stacy Gallant? He was Detective Sergeant Stacy Gallant with the Toronto Police for almost 31 years. I think it was like 30 years and 8 months, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
They referenced. And he spent 15 years in the Homicide Unit, and some of his last positions were managing the Cold Case Unit, forming the new Missing Persons Unit, and the Forensic Video Analysis Unit. Now, he is currently right now, and it only makes sense, he's currently now with GardaWorld as the Director of Investigations and Executive Protection. And talking to Stacy, and we've had some time to meet and have a lunch together. I'd say I'm very, very impressed, Stacy, with going into your background and what you've done, and given the fact that we have so many people that aspire to kind of get into law enforcement or are currently in law enforcement or in the security industry. I just thought it would be amazing for people to kind of just hear what you are, who you are, and thank you for coming down today.
No problem. I'm glad to be here and happy to share whatever knowledge I can with the audience.
Amazing, and you look fantastic in that blue jacket.
Yeah, I know, it's a good choice, right?
Nice sharp color.
Yeah, I know.
All about image.
Exactly.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to say that we had the pleasure of seeing a segment that Global News put on for you, and I mean, it's an emotional segment, it's informative, and to me it's amazing that you kind of share some of the details of the case. You can tell right away you know all of the names, and I right away I was just imagining all those conversations with those families. I can only imagine years and years and years of doing this, how much it took of you, and I just want to say thank you for that service, because we know some of your colleagues and the body of work that they've given in service and police. We know there's a stigma sometimes, like we come across it all the time, even from close family that we know. So I just wanted to say thank you personally.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was an honor to do the job that I did for so long. It really was.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Okay, why don't we jump in now? Obviously, Stacy, we could always do a Google search and find out who you are. But let's go back to young Stacy. You know what I mean? Like, I think if I'm correct, if I remember this properly, did you always have a desire to get into policing, or you didn't?
Not really in the very beginning, early stages. Graduating from high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started going to university for business, really. Accounting, finance, that sort of thing. I went to University of Windsor, and I just wasn't getting it. I didn't feel at that time that it was my passion. It just wasn't there for me. And I happened to come up to Toronto because two of my brothers lived here at the time, and came up on a weekend and basically never went home. Toronto became my home after that.
Right.
And when I was here...
That was your brother's plan, huh?
Yeah,
right?
well, maybe. But when I was here, I met a few people that were new to me, and one person in particular was working in a hotel in Toronto, and I was looking for a job because I decided to stay, and he says, why don't you check out this job? And it was in security, and so I, sure, okay. And at the same time, this person was going to Seneca College for their law enforcement program. I forget what it was called at the time, but I think it was called law enforcement.
This is the one at King City?
In King City, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was I think it was literally called law enforcement.
Yeah. So I went down. I got hired at the security job, and it was a plainclothes format. It wasn't a uniform guard service. It was a hotel security. And at the same time, I decided, that law enforcement course sounded pretty interesting that this person was in. So I went and I signed up for the course as well. So
Wow.
And that kind of set in motion what was going to happen for me in the future. So I started taking this course up in King City, like you say. I would drive up there every day from Toronto, and then I was still working a 40-hour work week at this new job that I had started because I moved up here on my own. I had to support myself. I had to do all that, but I wanted to continue on and get into what would ultimately be my long-term career. So when I started in the Seneca College, I didn't really know anything about policing. I had no relatives in policing. I had no contacts in policing. I had nothing. I was no contact. Nobody in my family was a police officer.
Right.
In any relatives or distant, nobody was.
Nobody.
No
Yeah.
connection whatsoever.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were kind of surprised that I went that route and that I was interested in that. And what was it? It was only about 3 or 4 months into being at Seneca College that I found out Toronto Police was hiring. And there was no requirement at that time for any background in schooling for law enforcement. These courses were relatively new back then.
And you'd have been what, like about 19 at this age?
1920, yeah.
Okay.
So this was back in 1988,
Okay.
I believe. So I heard Toronto was hiring, as I said, and thought, why don't I throw in my application and see what happens? So I did that, and a number of months went by. I got a phone, or can't remember if I got a phone call or letters. I think it was all done by letters back then. I still have all those letters saying, come in for an interview, come in and there was some testing to be done. And, each phase, I passed each phase. And then I think one of the final ones was a home visit by an officer from the recruiting or employment area. And an officer came to my house that I was living at the time and, did an interview to see me in my home element, although I was living with a bunch of students, and it was okay.
That must have been fun getting that place ready, right?
Exactly. Cleaning it up and what is this? Because it was all new to me, and I was nervous, of course. So.
And making sure your housemates behave, right?
Can everybody leave? And,
exactly. Smart.
Leave me alone and give me that time.
And take the cats with you.
Yeah.
Right?
So I passed that, and then I received a letter in the mail saying I've been accepted, and this was now, I guess, March, and the acceptance was to start work in April with the police. So I talked to my teachers in Seneca. I told them, listen, I got hired. I'm leaving, and I'm not going to complete the course. And I never did complete the course because I left, basically after 1.5 semesters. And then I started with the police. I started at the time we still had the cadet program. And so I became a cadet to start. And there was a little bit of training in-house, Toronto Police College, which was up in Scarborough at the time, CO BIC College it was called back then. So I went to the college there, got a little bit of training. Then all of a sudden I find myself in uniform, in a police uniform with no handgun at the time because you're a cadet, and no use of force options. I think we did have handcuffs though, if I recall. And then my first job was as a summons server. So, and I'm new to the city. I don't know Toronto from anything. I've, been up here a couple times to visit, and that was about it.
What was your hometown?
Windsor.
Windsor. Okay. Yeah.
So now I'm driving around in I forget, there were little Horizons, I think, back then that we used for cars. And driving around the city and handing out parking summonses for people that defaulted on their fines. And, every day we'd get stacks of them, and you'd have to go into all these neighborhoods and, basically serve the people with these summonses. And, you quickly learned the good and the bad areas of the city, depending on where you were assigned. And that was interesting for a while. And then I got sent over to the traffic services to do parking tickets. It was kind of like the next graduation of that. And I'm only talking within a 6-month time, I think. Okay. And then over to traffic services. And, right away they train you on, at the time they trained us all on riding the Harley Davidsons. Okay. In uniform and handing out parking tickets, doing the rush hour routes, and on this motorcycle that's all deckled with, Toronto Police.
Right.
And again, I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this stuff. I'm like, I remember catching myself walking by a window downtown Toronto and seeing myself, and I'm like, oh my God, this is real. Like, I'm in uniform, walking around in Toronto, having come from, a much smaller town, and I'm 20 years old, and look at me, like, wow, I can't believe this. It was a big shock and a big, change in lifestyle and change in who I was.
It seems that you were also, for the age of 20, very grounded and mature, which obviously the police saw that, you know, and hired you. And I say that because, you know what the crazy thing is, I'm pretty sure you've seen this. We've talked about this in the past, but when you look at a 20-year-old right now, it seems like they're almost like 5 to 10 years off.
Yes.
It's like the world's moved forward, but they've like lagged in maturity levels. And that's kind of insane when you think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's our own fault. That's society's fault that we've, you know, put too much bubble wrap around people now as they're growing up, and allowing them to not have to do everything on their own, and allowing them to stay at home, and allowing them to do all these things because, you know what, I had to do that growing up and it was tough, and I wanted to make it easier for you, so I'm going to allow you to do all this.
Right.
But really, it's hurtful to them.
Right.
It just doesn't,
it's
you don't
true.
mature as quick.
Yeah, it
It's
doesn't
so
prepare
true.
them for the real world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Anyway, we were just doing a site visit. I'll just throw this in here quickly, and pulling into the parking lot, and a mother had the back door open, and we're like, oh, just be careful. Let's go to another parking spot because the little kid's gonna come out. And the kid came out, and it was like a 13-year-old kid who was the size of his mom, and we were just like, huh? And she was literally guiding, opening the door, helping him. So that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Just means well, but I mean, he's old enough to get out of the back of the car, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, okay.
So you're in your 20s. You have these amazing opportunities that are coming to you. It seems in a good, quick, fast way where you're getting a lot of experience in the short time. So how does the path keep leading you?
The path that, you know, after that, quickly went to the Ontario Police College in Elmer, and, you know, began the recruit training, as they call it. And, you know, you come back to Toronto after that, and you get started in your home division, and now you have all this authority. And now you're carrying a gun, and you have a use of force options, and all those things are now there. And again, at a young age, you have to learn very quickly how to deal with these situations. You have a training officer, and you're not driving yet because, you know, your training officer is going to drive. The training officer is going to tell you what to do, how to act, where to go, what to do, all that sort of stuff. And that's going to go on for a little while as you learn. You quickly find out, you know, what the world is actually like, and what people are actually like. And you see things that you can't imagine that are real. It's like, I didn't grow up experiencing these things. I didn't know these things existed in these housing complexes, and in these, you know, in the playgrounds, and in the back alleys, and the night times, and the, you know, all the things that go on. It's a bit of a shock to people, and to see what people can do to each other.
Yeah. To see what they're capable of.
Yes. But you know, driving around in uniform, everybody has to do it. You don't start out any other way. If you're becoming a police officer, you start in uniform or with everybody else. And minimum you have to do is the 4 years going through your ranks from 4th class up to 1st class before you're kind of fully trained, as one would say. But even at 5 years or 4 years, I wouldn't consider yourself fully trained at that point. Policing is a lifetime of training. It's not something that ends at some point in time. It's ongoing always during your career.
It's always evolving.
Ever evolving. Things change all the time. There's new things. There's changing of ways. There's new legislation, better ways to do things. Lots of changes all the time. But you know, I started and paid a lot of attention to my training officers, and I had some really decent ones that I learned a lot from. You know, I'd watch them and study them and see like how they were doing things. It wasn't, you know, the worst thing you could do is walk in and say, "Oh, I know everything." I walk in, I'm new, but I know. I read the books. I've seen the movies. I've done it all. I know how to do this. I get it. I know how to do it. I can talk to anybody too. And no, you gotta learn from people that have experience, and watching them and seeing how they do things is amazing if you have the right training officers. I remember driving, you know, with one training officer, and he would pull up up to a group of people walking down the street, or even an individual, and right away he'd let me see your bail papers to the kid walking down the street. Sure enough, the kid would open up his pocket and here you go, officer. And you know, we'd check him, run him through the computer and see if he was wanted or anything like that, and you know, write down his name, the things that we would do back then. and let him go. And off we go. And then I'd ask the training officer, did you know that guy? He goes, no. I said, well, how'd you know he was on bail? He goes, don't worry, you'll get it. You'll see it. Eventually you'll get it.
Right.
And it was about reading people, and it was about watching people. And I didn't know at the time, but he had seen this guy. Maybe as we drove around the block, I think he saw him before, and he noticed maybe a little look, maybe the way he stepped, the way he walked. He turned a little bit and looked back, or whatever it was. He noticed something about that individual
Right.
that keyed in his mind, I'm going to go back around and pull up on the guy and talk to him.
Okay.
So he had that sense. And it took a long time. And I remember doing a similar thing when I became a training officer and driving around and pull up on someone and, yeah, let me see your bail papers. Same thing when I had the trainee. It was like, how'd you know
How
he was
did
on
you know?
bail?
Yeah.
I said, don't worry, you'll get it.
Right,
Like, it was that cycle. And eventually you would be able to see a group of kids, and you could tell whether they're up to no good or whether they were just, kids playing in a park or
Yeah,
whatever.
being boisterous.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and you could read people, and you had to learn that. That's not something you know right away.
Right.
Some people are better than others, but it's something you have to learn and experience and do multiple times. Today's day and age, it's everybody is on the police about stopping and talking to people, and you have no right to do this, you have no right to do that, you can't stop and investigate people. Well, it's, if you think about what community policing is, it is supposed to be pulling up and talking to people and engaging them and talking to them. But anytime a police car pulls up to someone now, you get that offensive. You can't talk to me. I don't have to give you my name.
Right.
You just want to have a conversation sometimes. Hey, what's your name? How's it going? What do you do? You live around
Right.
here? Yeah.
Right.
And have that conversation. But everybody's afraid to do that now because
Right.
of all the backlash that the police get.
Yeah.
So the way the police were viewed back in, let's say, the early 90s to how they're viewed right now, would you say there's a big difference right now?
Yes, very
Okay.
big. There was a lot more respect back then.
Okay.
There was a lot more respect from parents of children or of teenagers or people that were getting in trouble. If you brought someone home, for whatever reason, the parents would, they'd be thanking you and saying, "Oh man, I'm trying, officer. What can I do to make things better for my son or my daughter or whatever it is? Like, I'm having trouble with the person." Now what are you doing with my kid? What are you? It's the
Wow.
opposite reaction
Right.
now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's difficult. It's hard out there for the people.
Oh, 100%. It must be very difficult times to police now. What makes it probably even more difficult is if there is situations, and I mean, there are, but, around the world that put a negative cast on policing, then suddenly it's like, this is everybody now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it starts becoming that now. It's a harder stigma to break now because of that, especially if the cases make like worldwide news.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame if a conversation can't be had. Just a general conversation
Yeah.
Right.
to get an idea, because it's right away it's propelled to there's a fear the cop's going to do this to me, or based on what I've seen. I know my rights. I'm just asking, hey man, you just want to ask a general question. Did you see where someone ran or whatever?
Right.
And they're filming you all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, you can tell, when you see the state of it, I would love to get your input on it, because you know what it was like before. For us, as civilians, we see it, we take it in. We feel that we're at least in a better vantage point because we work in the private security sector, but for the general public, what's your thoughts? When, what do we lose as a community when you don't have those conversations?
You lose a lot. It's a trickle-down effect because, as I said, training is ongoing for life in this career. You always have to learn. You always have to learn to adapt. You have to change. You have to do things new and do all these things. And change is good. Learning new things is always good. But if you basically tell officers and have that idea that, you can't roll up on someone walking down the street or on a bicycle or pull over a car and have a conversation with someone, how are they ever going to learn to engage someone and read them and decide whether or not they're doing something wrong or right without having the ability to learn how to do that?
Yeah.
And you're really taking that away. And then what happens is when a situation does happen and they have to engage with someone, they don't have that training to fall back on.
Yeah.
As you know, in training, repetition
Yes, is the
is
mother
the key.
of
right?
repetition is the mother of all learning.
And if you never do it and then all of a sudden you're thrown into a situation, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right.
You know exactly what's going to happen. It's
Yeah.
going to go bad.
Yes.
And it's going to go bad in a bad way. And
And
officers
that,
are going to look back.
and that kind of reinforces the whole fear of it all.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it's that trickle down. It's not helping anyone by saying you can't do that. And again, when I talked about community policing and saying that, there's no harm in rolling up on a group of kids in a park saying, hey guys, what's going on? Everybody good? You guys live around here? Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Oh, I think I know your brother, or I know your sister, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have those conversations and get to know the people. But if we're told or if society is telling the police, no, don't talk to my son, don't talk to my daughter, you have no right to stop them, you have no right to engage them, where does that leave us when something really does happen and they need the police?
Yeah.
Right? The officers aren't going to have the training to be able to react properly.
Right.
Yeah. To navigate it, because that's when it gets really tricky, right?
And then society is going to complain, well, why didn't these are officers, they're professionals, why don't they know how to do this job?
Right.
Well, you're not allowing them to do the job.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Continuous scrutiny.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know, and I did curve the journey a little bit right now, but going back in, so like one of the biggest things that you basically been able to do, and I guess would you say even be known for, is the investigations, right? How did you fall into that? Like, I know obviously it's going to be a sequence, but how did that come into play?
Yeah, as I said, you have to do a number of years in uniform before you can even think about getting into the investigative areas and go that route. So, I learned early on in my career that there was a number of different routes that you could take, and there was a number of different ways to get there. And I had watched, other colleagues go from place to place, getting into investigative units or getting into different positions, and basically watch and learn. I watched them. I saw the way they did their work. I learned from them, and eventually I made a decision for my career, and it was my decision to make as to the way I wanted to wrote my career and where I wanted to go, what aspirations I had.
Right.
I think one of the biggest moments in my decision-making process was I was in uniform at the time, and there was a murder investigation ongoing up on the Danforth, because that's the area I worked at the time. And I was one of the uniform responding officers. I don't know, I was maybe on 5 years or so. And I remember going into the scene, or homicide officers arriving on the scene, and they walked in and everybody knew it. And they were impeccably dressed. They had fedoras on.
Right.
I remember the lead officer coming up to me and talking to me as a young officer. I was like, who is this guy? Like, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
And he comes up and
This is why they make movies about these guys, right? Yeah.
He takes out his memo book and he takes out this gold pen and he starts talking to me. Officer, I understand you're the first on scene, or one of the officers on scene. Can you tell me what, what's this or what's that? And, asking me some of the background questions. And I was just totally impressed. I was like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
I want to be that.
Wow. That's good.
And that was kind of that started my journey on the path that I wanted to go.
Okay.
I knew at that point, I wanted to be some type of an investigator. Ultimately, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but that's where I want to be, or that's who I want to be. I want to be like that.
Okay, park the thought for a second. How many people did you know in your career, as you were growing and elevating and building, that were just perfectly content in just remaining in a constable status and not doing nothing else?
Yeah, that's another route. That's one of those routes. There are some people that are constable for life.
Right.
And that's totally happy. That's totally great.
Right.
There are certain people that all they want to do is traffic. And they want to be we call them traffic guys or traffic gals.
Right.
And that's all they want to do. They love doing traffic. They love doing radar. They love investigating accidents.
Right.
That's their forte.
Okay.
And that's perfectly fine and acceptable if that's what they want to do.
Right.
And they're happy doing it, and that's the path that they choose.
Right.
Other people are totally content working in a division, driving a police car, doing the, community policing, walking the beat, riding a bicycle, whatever path that is.
Yes.
They can choose that, or they can go simply not make a choice and just let things unfold as they will.
Okay.
And so you have a couple avenues that you can go down, right?
Okay.
Any advice you give, I'd say that I'm going to make an assumption, though, that there's probably a good majority of people who just are where they are because they weren't intentional. They just kind of, you go to work, you do your thing, you go to work, do your thing. I had a conversation with a colleague recently who said that, the last 10 years, they weren't intentional. And they just realized, wow, 10 years went by so quickly. Okay, so any advice you'd give from everything that you've learned, because there's an aspect of like recognizing. I think it's amazing that you were observant. You saw a picture of a division that you didn't have exposure to. You know, Mr. Goldpen with the fedora came in well dressed, and you thought, I could see myself doing that, right? And it built that intrigue. You know, aside from just paying attention, is there any other pointers that you'd give to people that once in a career in policing, this is one way to not just let the time go? And yeah,
I think the biggest thing is early on, make a choice and decide what you want to do in your career, and start to follow that path and make the things happen for yourself. Don't allow others to dictate what your career is going to be. You know, you drive it. You're in the driver's seat. If you want to aspire to go somewhere and be an investigator, or be a senior ranking officer, or work in the booking hall and booking prisoners, or whatever it happens to be, if you have that desire, take the steps necessary, follow the path, have a plan, and set out on it, and do what you need to do to try and get there.
And I love that.
That's amazing.
Because to me, I think you're right. If there's some people that just want the most simplicity of what they do, go for it. However, I find that in today's society, a lot of people will be like, oh, look at Stacy in his new car, or look at this, or look at that. Like, and they're like, wait a second, the journey that Stacy took to get there, obviously he went through against the grain. He went through obstacles. He chose opportunities that maybe someone never saw. So his end product of life enjoyment, environment, whatever that may be, is all because of the choice that you made. So I think the folly also is that a lot of people that do want just the simplicity of things. I mean, if you look at sports, right? If any player who gets drafted, whether it be the NHL or the NBA, you got an opportunity that many people don't have. But if you just look at it like, okay, I'm just going to do the simplistic stuff, the reality is that you might get benched or traded, or your career might end. So to aspire for more, Stacey, is, I think, a really good plan to have, which it seems like you were like very, very clear on that.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, it doesn't end. It doesn't end once you get to the next position.
That's right.
It just keeps going. You just have to plan further, and really, like, it's not a set roadmap. You don't know where it's going to end up all the time.
Right.
Can you say that again?
It's not a set roadmap.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't know where you're going to end up. You could be going down one direction and you turn left, and it takes you somewhere else, and that's cool. If that works, if you change directions and want to end up somewhere else midway through, then you do it. Okay. But it's your choice.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no guaranteed recipe, right? Yes. You just follow these 4 things, then you will.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get to where you want to be either.
Okay.
Like, you might want to be at a certain level or in a certain position, but that's not to say you're going to get there 100%. There could be twists and turns along the way that you don't know are going to happen, that changes the course of everything for you.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really good. So you have this encounter, you get inspired. I want to be that person. What happens?
You buy a fedora in Kensington Market.
No, not yet. That's long way away. So I continued on doing uniform work, and eventually got an opportunity to work in the criminal investigative office at the division I was working at, meaning, the uniform guys would go and arrest people for various offenses or take reports. And then the CIB, as we called it, would process the prisoners and process the people that are arrested, lay the charges, take the cases to court, investigate occurrences that are unsolved, do interviews and do all that detective work. So I had an opportunity to go in a training position for that. I think after about 5 or 6 years, and again, it was like, I like doing this kind of work. It was kind of my thing. I wanted to do that more and more. So at the division I was at, there was a couple of different units that worked in plain clothes. And I got an opportunity again to go into one of those units, and I enjoyed doing it. It was, working, solving street crimes and street robberies, that sort of thing. Back in the day, there was a lot of swarmings going on. There was a lot of high school violence going on. So I was working.
Could not walk in groups of 3 or more because of what would happen. And
stealing shoes, like stealing brand new shoes outside the mall off people, and like all kinds of stuff. So I was in a unit called the street crime unit. And that was great. I loved doing that. That was a lot of fun. And there's one thing on the job for 31 years that I would say so many times in my career, I can't believe they paid me to do this. Really, I got paid to do this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Can you unbox that? What do you mean when you say that?
The things that you got to do, or that I did in my career, it's like the things you see on TV, like kicking in doors and doing search warrants and arresting bad guys and chasing people in cars, or running and chasing people, having foot pursuits and doing all that. And you get the bad guy at the end of the day, and at the end of it, I'm like, man, they pay me to do this. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You watch it on TV and you watch it here and there, and it's like, wow, that's cool. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
Like, I'd do that for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just let me come on a ride along and let me try that. And
no day's the same day, right?
Yeah. So it's that's something that a lot of guys say, that the guys and girls that love policing and really aspire and really make something of their careers, you have a lot of people say that.
But I think also what that equates to is something internally and within you, and I think that is like your protector nature. Okay, I think a lot of people, not just in policing, but in the protection world, whether it be in anything like in security or customs or whatever, if they're doing it and looking at it as just a job, just money, just a good pension, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And we recently had Peel Regional, and they were down here doing a recruitment drive, for our people. And one of the things that they said is that they're asking a question, why do you want to be a police officer? Well, I want to serve my community. And they give you these really generic answers that it's like, no, really, why do you want to do that? We always talk about it, the person that may see a person getting hit by his girlfriend, or maybe someone's about to jump off the bridge, or maybe someone gets into a car accident. Are you going to be that person that would go to help them, or are you going to be that person that might take your phone out or just drive right by? These things are important to know internally if anyone's listening, if you're ever having those, because that could mean you have a protector nature inside you, right, which you need to foster and kind of get into a career in kind of in policing. But for yourself, even everything that you said, like one of the lines that I pulled from that global news things that you referenced about, when you retired, it was one of the most difficult things that you had to do, which shows to me that it was you.
It was a labor of love.
It was a labor of love.
Yeah, you're walking away from a love, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and it's still, I think about it and think about leaving, and it was a hard thing to do, to step away. But along the journey, it was so much fun, and I had such a great career. How do you walk away from something that you did for so long and you love doing?
Right.
It's hard to do.
It's hard. It's the best situation to be in, though, right?
Yeah. You got to know when your time is, and I say to a lot of people, like, leave when you're on top. Don't wait to leave a job or a position or a function or something when you're in trouble for something, or when you're on the bottom of a stack of paper. You want to leave when you're on the top of it. When everything's going good, when everything's great, that's when you walk out. And you finish things. Not when you're in trouble or there's a cloud over you for some reason. That's not a good way to leave something that you've done for so long.
No, I know. I wanted to also you were talking about, in terms of investigations, being kind of a junior investigator, being access to the unit. You did that for about 5-6 years. I love just that statement like that, because look, we work with a lot of younger men and women who are kind of on the road to start this policing journey. And it's, what do we call it? The microwave mentality.
Yeah.
Right. If you were to say, okay, you just got to kind of get used to something over the next 5-6 years, most people would really not.
No, they want it now. They want it now.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody wants everything right away. I can do that. Why am I not getting that?
Right.
It's that.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Why can't I do it? I know how to do it.
Can you speak to that?
Again, it comes down to that training and experience and putting in your time to learn. You can't walk into any job and be an expert at it unless you've done it before. And you can't, and for policing, there's so much to learn as you go through. And a lot of it is about people and about reacting to people, learning to read people, learning to interact with people, how to talk to people, learning the cues on their behavior, and on watching someone's demeanor and body language when you're standing there talking to them, how they move. You learn a lot of things from having those interactions multiple times with people and with different people. And you can't walk into somewhere and say, I want to be detective today. And I've done 2 years on the road, and I want to be detective now.
You know what?
It's not that easy.
What you're saying is like, don't scoff at the process.
Right.
There's a process. It takes time. Time affords you so many things. It gives you this intuition. It gives you insight and experience. I think it's, the folly in wanting it so quick is what happens when you're there.
Yeah.
Like if you actually got what you wanted as fast as you wanted, could you really, really perform at a high level? And I think, what you're speaking to is the mindset of committing to what you're doing right now. If this is in front of you and you put your all in it, there's maybe a chance over time it's going to really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
That the love and the care, and to like really say like, I'm going to put my all in this work, to trust that over time, it would be recognized versus trying to put your time into being so loud to get recognition.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? And
Yep,
just
exactly.
like the most basic thing, and just like to let your actions, there's a whole thing like, I can't hear what you're saying because your actions speak so loud.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a good and bad thing. Right?
Yep.
Okay, so.
And, one thought that came to mind as well, in a place like Toronto, and for the most part, the GTA services, they're so large, not New York size-wise, but they're very large in terms of the amount of different things that you can do in your career. Anything from...
I see it in terms of options.
Yeah. You can drive a police car around for your whole career. You can go to the mounted unit and ride horses. You can go to the canine unit and be a dog handler.
The bomb unit.
You can... the bomb unit, ETF. Undercover work. I'll go there in a minute as well. About undercover work. You can become a detective. You can become, rise through the ranks, ride a bicycle, ride a motorcycle, drive a truck, drive a car, helicopters, planes,
Marine
units, boats. Like there's so many career paths that you can go down.
Right.
And each one is different. And
search and rescue.
How many can you do in your career? You can bounce around and do a bunch of them, but are you going to be good at every one of those if you do? And, 30 years is not a long time, really, when you look at it. If you do 5 years here, 5 years there.
Yeah, you're right.
Your first 5 years is training, and then you go on and you do 5 years here, 5 years there. You're looking at 3 or 4 things that you can really do over your career. But the options are wide. You can, like I said, if you're a boater and you want to be in the Marine unit, great, go do that and enjoy it.
Yeah. My kids were just introduced to that just with the warm weather. We're by the harbor front, and they saw the boat. And my kids were introduced to what it was, and my son, he was just like, "Whoa!" Like he just the thought of being a cop on the water, and then right away they're like, "What are their duties? Like, what do they do? What happens here?" And it was really cool. The exposure to that. You never know if that was enough to plant the seed that that's what he wants to do.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah.
One of the areas that I thought about and I was kind of back and forth on was the undercover stuff. I kind of had it in my mind early on too that I'd like to do some of that undercover stuff. I want to go, infiltrate. These gangs or whatever, maybe buy guns or buy drugs and be kind of that undercover guy. And that was great. I did a little bit of it, not a whole lot. If I didn't go the detective route, I think I probably would have went that route over there. But
got a nice hoop earring.
Growing
a goatee.
But that is totally different than being an investigator.
That's right.
Yes.
Now, you obviously you said you looked on Google and you saw me on there. Can you imagine if I was an undercover at any point in time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm on the news every other day and, doing interviews and doing all kinds of stand-up interviews or press releases and things like that. My name would be all over the place.
Right.
I could never be an undercover now.
That's right. That's right.
Out of the ballpark. So everybody would know who I am.
That's right. That's right.
So you got to choose that path,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And when you talk about undercover stuff a little bit, again, it's a different mindset. It's a different way of doing things. Is it necessary that you have, 20 years or 10 years of policing background for you to go in and do undercover work? As a uniform officer for 10 years, and then you want to become an undercover cop and do, drug buys and stuff like that. It would be helpful to know from a uniform perspective and from a law enforcement perspective, how people roll in that area when they see the police and how they react and that. But at the same time, if you walk into an undercover role and you are a cop and you're playing that undercover role, sometimes you may jeopardize your own self or the investigation because there's too much cop. and you have that look, or you have that tingly feeling about something that you've learned while you're doing all your uniform and other background work.
I see. Yeah.
So, sometimes the best undercover may have, limited time as an investigator or as a uniformed police officer. Sometimes it's better to get them in early in that undercover stage, because you don't want them coming off as a cop.
That's good advice.
They're undercover role.
They're not
advice,
matured
right.
and formed into
Right.
just like,
But it's true. But it's also kind of planning your career, right? Meaning, as in, like, if you do want to head undercover, you do not want to go into avenues that are not going to really get you there faster. You know what I mean? So that's good. 100%. You need to plan that.
Yeah. So it is all about planning. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, any advice for the high functioning individual who says, okay, look, I'm going to go in. I hear what you're saying. Okay. Any advice that you can give to them for their mentality to approach the work, that for them just to, like, maybe paying attention to that inner dialogue of, like, what do you really enjoy? Because sometimes we get into a habit of just doing. And many people have found when they look back, they're like, I didn't enjoy what I was doing. Right? Because, like, the task and, like, policing is demanding work. So it probably will always ask something of you, but were you reflective? Did you take time away from the job and take literally those long walks and find a way to, like, just to be in tune? Like, how did you kind of through happy accidents fall into something and be like, it was just enough for you to be like, I like that. Right? You know what I mean? Like, and I say that because, like, even now you ask someone, like, hey, what food you like? People take a while to answer. I don't know, because we have so many options, right? It's just like, well, it depends where. Like, what part of the city are we going to be in? And, like, but it means that you're really not in tune with what you really like, who you really are. So anything that you'd like to share about that?
It's personally, the job that I did for all this time was so satisfying for me. It was like being a sponge and soaking up all the information and watching everything and learning and constantly learning and always wanting to have that, where am I going next? Okay, what am I going to do next? And how am I going to get there? And what do I want? Do I want to get promoted? Do I want to stay where I am? Do I want to go to a different unit? And having that pathway, and that's what we keep talking about, is going back to your path that you have. Those are all important things. Another important thing is exactly that, your mindset and how you look at things and how you respond to things. Not everybody is the same. The way I respond to something is not the same as the way you would or you would.
It's unique to you.
It is exactly that. I may never have an issue seeing somebody that's been murdered and dismembered and all the bloody gore of it. That may not bother me personally, but somebody standing right next to me, that may bother them quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they may have a hard time dealing with it.
Yeah.
But they have to deal with it. So, making sure that you take care of yourself in that way, to whatever extent it is that you need to, is important in this job as well. PTSD didn't exist when I started.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about it. It was, suck it up, buttercup. And
just like concussions in sports.
Yeah.
Right?
Because nobody knew what it was.
Right.
And nobody understood it. And, how did we deal with things back then? We'd go out after shift and we'd have a few beers and we'd talk about it and we'd make crude jokes about things and that we'd all laugh at them, but if anybody from the outside would hear what we were saying,
no, I know.
Man, what are you guys saying? But it was a way of dealing with it.
That's a natural response.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd lose your sanity fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And but there's a lot of different things that happened over the years that allow us now to bring those issues to the surface and get them dealt with properly, as opposed to self-medicating and holding it all in and boxing it up. But again, it may not bother some people, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So you're saying you got to know you. You have to know you. Know what you're about. What I love too is that it is amazing to hear from you, the curiosity you had, and to say things like you were a sponge and you enjoy it. I'm thinking like you probably from now could do another 30 years like nothing.
Oh yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like
it goes by so quick.
It's pretty amazing to see that it hasn't worn on you. We had the pleasure of having Chief of Police from Halton, Stephen L. Tanner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had the same thing. We were like amazed that he did not look like he was jaded, worn down. He had this like youthful energy about him. After all the time, wasn't that amazing to see?
Yeah.
And I think you exude that. I think it's, to me personally, I'm not sure how much exposure you still have to policing circles, but like, you know, if I was a young cop, I wouldn't want to spend time with you still, because I think, like, you know, it would be a shame of the richness of your experience and the fact that it has such, I guess, good energy about it, right? You know what I mean? And I just think I think it's important, especially with police these days. It's such a hard job.
It is.
It
Yeah,
is
and you
such a hard job.
You got to separate the politics of the you know, the issues of the day to the true policing core function of what you're doing. You know, the job, the crimes haven't changed in forever. Stealing is still stealing.
Nothing's new
Murdering is
under the
still
sun.
murdering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, all those things are the same. What happens is all the stuff around it that cause that, you know, your distractions and your, you know, poking and your, you know, things that will try to circumvent the system for the good of someone else. That, you know, why are you doing this to me? Well, it's only because it's me that you're doing this. Well, no, it's not. You committed a crime.
Yeah.
I'm the police, or I'm dealing with it and arresting you. Well,
Right.
well, why did you single me out? Well, it wasn't you. It was you
What's not the
committed a
color of their
crime.
skin is
Yeah.
that there's blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay, that's
right,
the color
exactly.
we're looking at
Right,
right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we're too clouded now with people using excuses for behavior to try and get away with it, or try not to be held accountable for it.
Do you have any plans now that you're in private? Do you have any plans in any way? I mean, I'm not sure if you've thought of it, you've propositioned it. Private, it means that you're out and you can choose to go in how you want to. Do you have any plans to kind of help shape, to create something better for policing? Whether it's a course or a message or writing a book or like, and I just say that, like, I'm not sure if anyone said it to you, and I can just tell you just directly that I think it would be incredibly valuable to people that are still in this job or people looking to go into it if they had access to your story. And you know, we say words like mentorship and all these, like, you know, I mean, like, there's so many ways, but, you know, I think the message of what your career is, you can actually say that you've come out of it, and again, you still have an energy about you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Like, if you saw, you would think the guy after 30 years doesn't really want to make eye contact with humanity, right? Like, those are the things. And you took on homicide for 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's just like it's a testimony to that you can go through it. And if you have the right mentality, I mean, just, have you thought of that? Is there anything like in kind of this next chapter or next chapter?
You're talking chapters. I've toyed with the idea of, you know, writing a book, and, you know, every now and then I write down a few things that are memorable that I think, oh, maybe I should write this. And I've done some stuff with some TV shows where I would consult on some TV shows about the scripting and things like that. And no, that's not the way that would happen, or that you should do this instead of that, because it's more realistic.
Or dramatic.
You know, yeah. So I would do that kind of stuff, and that was interesting. When I did get out as well, I've done things like this before. I've done forums to talk to people, police officers mainly, transitioning out of policing into the private sector, and how to go through that. I did that with on ACES with that forum, and you know, talking with a number of my colleagues and being on a panel discussing those sort of things. I think it's important for me to do that and to give back, and to, if I can help anybody in their career in that way, that's great. I would love to do that, because I like to see someone coming up behind me that valued the job the way I did, and that performed the way the job that I did. And I want to see that happening behind me. I don't want it to be anything less than what I put in.
Yeah.
Like, I think all of the people in policing should have those desires and be there for the right reason, and want to strive and do more, and have a great career. Because, you know what? It was a fantastic career. And would I do it again? Sure. I would want to do it again in the same time period that I did it, starting in 1989 and going forward.
Right.
Would I want to start it today? For me personally, no, I wouldn't, because I know things were a lot different when I did the job.
Yeah, things have changed.
And things have changed. So it would be very hard for me to start off today and do another 30 years knowing how it was the prior 30 years.
Okay.
Right?
No, that's good.
Because you go into it differently. You have a different mindset because you grew up. Now, you grew up, you guys have your phones on the table. You grew up with phones. right? People grew up with the phones and always having them, and taking pictures of everything and
Right.
and everything nonstop. There's cameras everywhere now.
Yeah.
Back when I started, with VCR
Yeah.
cassette tapes
Yeah.
for recording in
Yeah.
in stores, and
Yeah.
if they worked, we were lucky. If if they didn't change a tape after 6 months, it was probably in there for 5 years, and
Yeah.
you couldn't even watch it because it was garbage.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
A lot of things changed. Body worn cameras, all that sort of stuff. Now, I wasn't subject to any of that. I
Right.
wouldn't. Not that I wouldn't be able to adapt to it and figure it out, but I like the way my career was and the way that we did things in my career time.
Right. Right.
And I would like, if I was to do it again, I'd like to go back and do it during that time,
Right.
or even before that time, maybe. But after that, no, I don't think I would want to be subject of, trying to arrest someone and having 20 people stand around you videotaping you instead of helping you.
Right.
Yeah.
Back in the day, if a cop was fighting with someone on the ground and trying to arrest them, you'd have 3 or 4 citizens stop their cars, jump out and come over and help you.
Well, I know this,
But now they would jump out and go over and start recording you.
And shouting at you.
Look, I know the Good Samaritan Act still exists, but I think it doesn't. I don't think the word Samaritan probably is not even used anymore, just because of what it is and how it is. Look, you went through a lot. You went through homicide. You went through investigations. You dealt with a lot of situations and cases, things that would probably desensitize somebody seeing it over and over again. But you had your tough days because Stacy's not a robot; he's a human being. What did you do when you hit those walls where it was like, man, this is so tough to even solve this case, or man, this is happening? What did you do to get you over that hump so you can keep pushing forward?
Yeah, for the next day and
Yeah.
the next day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because like I said, everybody deals with things differently. And I've seen some people that have come and gone through homicide that had a harder time than others processing it and getting through it. Thankfully for me, I don't know why, but things didn't seem to affect me. Maybe they will someday. I don't know. Maybe they will. But the way I got through those hard times were my thought pattern and my motivation was, I want to get whoever did this.
Okay.
And,
That was the focus.
That was
Yeah.
my focus. Whoever did this, I want to get them.
Okay.
And they need to pay for it, and they need to be held accountable for it. And, seeing the worst thing happen to, a child being murdered or, anyone being murdered, it didn't matter who the victim was. Nobody deserves that.
Mm-hmm.
And my objective and my goal at the end of every day was find the person responsible and make them account for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's good. You
and-
created something to be your fuel.
That was my, exactly.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was my fuel. It wasn't, I didn't go home and,
You know what? That's amazing. Okay, go. Keep saying. Finish your
I
thought.
didn't go home and feel, put down or that it was a weight on my shoulders that I couldn't deal with because I'm so stressed about, seeing these bad things or not being able to solve it on day one. That didn't weigh on me the way it might weigh on some others. There was some there, but I didn't get depressed about it. I didn't get, I don't know, I didn't react maybe as emotional sometimes as others would. My dealing with it was, I'm going to go in tomorrow and I'm going to find another way. I'm going to find another way. Whatever avenue it is, keep looking for those avenues to try and solve it or do what you need to do to advance the investigations. I think that's the way I dealt with it. And you got to be careful in dealing with those types of things because you could go down the wrong way. And a lot of guys do, they turn to alcohol, for example. And that is a downfall of a lot because you can do that by yourself. You can think about things while you're drinking and you can, let that take a hold on you and cloud your judgment and your image and everything else about you if you go down that road. Drugs, same way. Other people get into, other ways of having an outlet. Maybe they go to the gym too much. Maybe they,
Right.
Whatever avenue that is. But you have to find that balance for yourself and what works for yourself as opposed to what everybody else does.
No, that's good.
You can't. Whatever works for you might not work for me. So
Right.
I got to find what works for me. in order to have that balance for myself.
It makes sense though that focusing on the work, it would be kind of a win-win because it's an outlet, but it's a focus that actually helps to possibly solve
Yeah.
the situation that you just find yourself in the career.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just like, just boxing and some non-relevant outlet. I think, there's a lesson too. I wanted to say again, respecting the whole process and understanding it's not as simple as this, but having a focus outside of the problem sometimes is the solution. You know what I mean? And just kind of as a general principle, I found with people who they fail to get out of the problem is because their focus is on the problem. Okay, and and it's just literally, it's like digging to get out of a hole. You can't dig yourself out. It's impossible. And as long as you're still focused there and your head's down on all the issues and how you feel through things, and again, not to speak in light of PTSD. I just mean in general, in a very, very general sense that. Focusing on the problem usually doesn't get you out of it.
True.
Right? Yeah.
True.
So I think that's kudos to you. I mean, without even knowing it, I think it's amazing. And if anything, like for me, my takeaway from what you said is if something's really difficult, focus on the solution. Focus on, and that was just, I need to find out who did this, who was responsible. And that was, all your energy, all your thoughts, that was your lane to get out of maybe something that was stuck in you. It's probably you didn't even know. If anything, right? It was like stuck on you, but over time you just kept going, and it eventually kind of fell away.
Right.
Versus it bring you down,
right.
And you needed to have to drink in order to just to numb your own thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is good. Like before we get into the next chapter, I think it's important for a lot of people listening. Who you are today, Stacy, the foundation of your career. The journey that you've had, the success, the passion, the love for the job, it really started from your strong foundation. And it really also started from your plan. You actually said earlier, I love the job so much. I mean, I would do it for free. And at the end of the day, I think that's a big problem with a lot of people is how they look at work or how they look at a goal or how they look at anything, is that you have to look at it in the right way for it to truly be successful, or else you're going to maybe go down a journey of regret, wasting your time, the whole thing. So you, Drew, speak a lot to that, and I think that's amazing. I think anyone that hears this and they want to get into any career, forget just policing, but any career, know what you want to do and why you want to do it, and make sure it really, really makes sense and counts, or you may just go through years and years of a very different experience. Someone can say, I did 30 years and I hated every minute of it, Yeah,
I think that to me is kind of like the definition of success.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about the monetary amount made. Like you just said that you would do it for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, that's amazing. That's when work doesn't become work. I mean, it's really cool.
Well, I can relate to what you're saying in the sense of, for us to run a business on the security side of things, what I lead by is not about making money. It's actually, that's not even a thought of my mind. It's about what can we do to make a change and a difference. Literally, that is what we lead by. Everything else that comes afterwards, like, oh, wow, really? That's great. I didn't even realize that. But that's the main piece. So I think that's something that a lot of people, if they're listening, really know what you want to do and why you want to do it. Define that purpose. So after a very, very long career that went just by like that for yourself, and it was hard for you to retire, you ended up making the next move. Now you could have retired and been on a little beach in Tahiti or something like that. But
not if I did the job for free.
Exactly. But for yourself, when you did retire, did you in your mind be like, okay, now I want to just relax and the family's pretty much yay, see, we're gonna have or was it more like, okay, I think this is just getting started right now again? What was that for you?
Well, as I said in the very beginning, I started this job at 20 years old.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to retire and do nothing.
Okay.
So again, talking about having a plan. So 10 years went by, things were going great. I'm getting into the investigative areas. I'm starting to know a lot of people on the service. They're starting to know me. I'm getting better positions. I'm getting where I want to be. 20 years on, or let's not go 20 years yet, 15 years on the job. I've been promoted now to detective. I'm running one of the teams at the Gun and Gang Task Force. I get invited, and I say invited, to go to Homicide. And I eventually take that invitation because ultimately that's where I wanted to be. I get promoted again to detective sergeant. And during that last 10 years or so of my career, is when I started to formulate my plan for my exit, because I knew it was coming and it was going to come fast, and it does. 30 years went by super fast. The last 10 years went by even faster. And I knew in advance that I wanted to do something else afterwards. I wanted to be able to take what I did in my 30 years, because I knew I wanted to retire around 30 years, and take all that I learned and leverage that into the private sector and try the private sector. As I said, when I first started the interview or our talk here, I was going to school for business.
Yeah.
That's where I thought I was going.
Yeah.
And then I changed and I went into policing. And to anybody out there that's thinking about changing their direction, especially early on when you're in university, when you're just starting out, do it. If you think you're not in the right program or you're not going down the right path, change. Go left, go right, go straight, whatever you want to do. But do it because it's what you want to do, and that's what your passion is going to be. Don't worry about, you're going to disappoint someone because you went to school for 3 years for this, and now you want to change and go do that. If you're not going to be happy in what you went to school for, then change it and do it early. Don't get stuck in a career that you're not happy with.
That's good, man.
Because who wants to work with you if they're sitting beside someone that doesn't want to be there?
Exactly.
It's not the people you want to be with, and
Absolutely.
and it's not healthy for your life either. So back to my last 10 years. As I said, I knew in my mind I was going to start planning for retiring and what I was going to do in the future. So I started to make changes in my career at that point. I started to get more involved in sort of management or administrative duties and things like that. Within the homicide squad and within the unit, I started doing a lot more business-related things on top of my investigations. I became kind of the go-to person for all of our computers and cell phones. And back when I first started in there, we had pagers. So I took on the role of being that person that transitioned us out of pagers to cell phones, or to cell phones to Blackberries to iPhones. Different computer programs, going from desktops to laptops, creating electronic disclosure. Everything used to be done in paper format, and I was one of the lead people that created the electronic disclosure, and all these business kind of related things. Starting the couple of different units that I did within the Toronto Police, the missing persons unit. So coming up with all the policies and procedures, and the forensic video analysis unit. Again, budgeting, policies, procedures, staffing, hiring people, training people, all that admin stuff that I felt would be useful in the corporate world when I transition out. I took every course I could get my hands on that I thought might be of value when I leave. Even one of the very last courses I took before I left, because they offered it and because I hadn't been updated in a while, was a first aid CPR course.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So, because I knew that could be helpful in any career that I go into. And I hadn't had that update. So I took it while it was offered. Why not take advantage of the things they're offering?
Yeah, smart.
Right? So, knowing that I was going to go and having it in my mind that I was going to look for something in the corporate world after I reached my mark sometime around 30 years, I started putting that plan in place and looking at strategically the areas that I wanted to build up for my own resume, and keeping track of everything. Every course I took, I started my resume, 25 years ago, I started keeping my unupdated resume, building it as I went. So when I left, I had, not that anybody wants a 10-page resume, but I have everything that I did, every unit I worked in, every course I took, every seminar I went to. I had it all at my disposal for my future. So keeping track of all those things as you move forward, and ultimately, knowing when is your time to go. And we talked a little bit about that as well earlier, about going out when you're on top. And choosing when that is. Thankfully, I think I made the right choice of when I left and how I left, and the position I was in when I left. For my own personal, my own personal opinion, I went out on the top of where I wanted to be. I did and accomplished, I think, the majority of things that I set out to do within my career. I had a great career. I didn't have any major pitfalls or major things occur during the course of my career. And I was able to leave when things were really good. And I made that decision which was a very hard decision to leave, but eventually I made it. And knowing that I'm going to go somewhere else, because I could have stayed another 10 years if I really wanted to, and just stay on and continue in my career, maybe get promoted again, or not.
Right.
But for me personally, I always thought, okay, I'm going to do my time, and then I'm going to leave and go do something else and see what else is out there. I want to experience the private sector now.
Right.
And how's it been? Like, you're with our good friends at Garda.
Yes.
And, I just realized it was like we had spoken kind of early pandemic really quickly when we assisted with some of the open hours that you guys had in that influx. But you kind of started with them like right before the pandemic.
Yeah, I started in January
2000.
of
2020.
2020.
Yeah, 2020.
2020 in January, 20 days after I retired.
Oh, wow.
And that was the plan. I decided I'm going to
Yeah.
take a couple of weeks off. We're going to go on a vacation. That
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
And then I'd start right in. And within what was it, about a month and a half? March, I think it started.
Yes, March 17th.
Yeah, March it started, and boom, we're in a pandemic, and I'm supposed to be developing a new operation in Ontario for consulting and investigations and executive protection, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and there's no work, and there's nobody wanting to do anything, and there's nothing going on, and I'm like, what am I going to do?
Well, there's not nothing. There was Zoom meetings happening
yes.
daily. Okay.
But I had no investigators, I had no clients, I had no work to do. I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
no, I call up people, I try and get some,
No, I know.
I can't go to a business meeting,
Yeah.
can't go to a lunch, can't go, trying to do all these things, and there's nothing coming in.
Right.
Because
everyone's
was shut down.
hibernating.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I transitioned a little bit in the early time to assist with a lot of the pandemic related stuff in regards to some of our clients and dealing with some of that stuff and helping Garda navigate through that time.
Yeah.
While I waited for things to open up and start to get some clients and get some revenue in my area coming in.
Of course.
So that took longer than expected because of the pandemic. And I think now,
I hope everyone was understandable about that.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, everyone was, yes, because they saw it too. But
Yeah.
now, 2.5 years later, I have a client base, I have revenue
Amazing.
streaming in, I have a number of people that, investigators that work for me on a regular basis. I have a lot of good relationships with other groups like
Yeah.
yourselves
Yeah.
and other people that I've met throughout the last 2.5 years, and things are going well.
Amazing.
And,
Amazing.
I've enjoyed transitioning over. It's been a big learning curve, but it's an expected learning curve. And, as I said, I talked to other police officers that are leaving on a regular basis. People will call me, or people I know will have conversations at retirement parties and stuff. And,
Yeah.
and they'll ask questions about, transitioning over and what it was like. And some of what I
This is
talk
where you
to
write
them
that
about-
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of what I talk to them about is about, that leading up and having that plan for when you retire.
Yes.
And what is next and how are you going to fulfill that? Not having a plan leaves you with one option. That's just to stay do what you're doing. And then 5 years down the road, you might say, oh, I wish I would have done something else. But then by then it's too late, or it's never too late, but
But yeah, you're losing time though.
you're losing time. If you, especially a lot of people in today's day, they don't start in policing when they're 20 years old. Typically they're starting sort of mid-20s, closer to 30 before they're getting on the job. There's not a lot of people start at 20. I don't know if there is any that start at
Right.
20
Yeah.
anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, if you look at, I got 30 years of a career, 31 years of a career in, and I can go on and start another career because I started when I was 20.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
And I'm still marketable and valuable to a company because I have a number of years left that I can dedicate to another career.
Yes.
Yes.
And I want to do that.
Right.
If I would have started when I was 35 and did 30 years, I'm not walking out and getting another career. I'm done.
Right.
Right? A lot of people getting into policing today, they may have already had one career before this career.
Yeah.
Before the policing career, and that's fine too, because they've had the opportunity to experience the private sector or a different career, and then do 30 years in policing, and then you can end it there.
That's good.
And
So-
that's fine.
That's
I
good.
want to ask you,
Right?
so what do you think is going to happen? So now that you're in private, give us an idea what some stuff that you're excited to do. So I know you kind of established yourself. You have this policing career. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that you kind of talk about doing something with police still to some degree.
Yeah, there's so I think there's a lot of interaction and need for the private-public partnerships in things. Like there's a lot of jobs that I've had these conversations with some policing executives and higher-ups in a number of departments that they're to help policing really is what it would be, and to help them manage their, the budgets and manage what the policing duties are, and taking some of those, the non-core responsibilities away from the frontline officers and policing and assigning them to private industry. That can really work. Do you need a police officer to drive and pick up a found bicycle, or to take a report for graffiti on the wall, or to and take pictures of that and submit it? You can actually have a civilian security
like
person,
a special constable,
that are employed by a private company that, you're not on the hook for the union, the wages, all those other things, because it's a private company and they're responsible for that. You can have them do those duties that are non-core policing functions at a lower cost. And it's a benefit to the city. It's a benefit to, the policing, taking that responsibility away from having to do the non-core things that they should be out there, chasing bad guys and doing what police are supposed to do, and take that away from them. And it's not, nobody's losing jobs. It's just shifting the job. The police don't have to do it anymore because the private company is doing it.
And they can put more focus in
exactly
where it's needed.
And also it builds up a repository for people that are a stepping stone, just like your company, as stepping stone for people to get into policing.
Right.
They experience a little bit of it. They say, maybe I want to get into be an actual police officer, or do that work now.
And here's the direct work experience.
Yes. Yeah.
That would greatly benefit them in their application process.
So, we've talked about that, and, I hope that will come someday.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing it more and more in the States right now, and I think we'll see it happening here more and more as well. They'll have those partnerships evolving. A lot of security companies do work for, security at courthouses, for example, or do prisoner transportation, do, a multitude of different things that were policing functions.
Yeah.
So
previously,
you can do it. It just has to be that willingness to try it and take that leap and start doing it.
Yeah, that's
great. Good. Yeah. Look, the stuff's today has been an eye-opener. It's been amazing. Today we heard how Stacy planned his work and then he worked his plan. And he basically has been able to demonstrate today just how to navigate, making good choices and looking at how to plan your career and move. I would say, like everything that we've heard today, I would just suggest to people is like, don't be just content with what you have. Keep striving for more. That's where you can maybe find out more about yourself and what you can do. Stacey, I really want to thank you for coming down today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really, really looking forward to growing our working relationship. And I know the work that you're doing at Garda right now is completely invaluable. You're providing something that, you have a foundation of 30 years of experience to kind of help you navigate through it. And I just can't wait for chapter 2.
Yeah.
And to me, I look at this as chapter 2 for you right now. You are literally in chapter 2 of your life, and congratulations on everything that you've done, all your accomplishments. Thank you for your service to the great city of Toronto, and again, I want to really thank you for that.
Yeah, and if I could ask on behalf of the private sector, again, with all admiration and respect, if you have an opportunity, as your colleagues also retire off, we come across a lot, and every now and then, look, we're smart enough to pick up not everyone has the mentality that actually values the private sector. Sometimes it's just like whatever. It's just, it's a place I can maybe make some extra money so that I can, leverage my career and I can build my deck and get the boat that I wanted and whatever. Okay. So, I'd appreciate that, just in the way that you're doing it, keep doing it, set a great example. And we need more people that have the richness of your career that come into the private sector to make it better, to truly help push the envelope of it, with the wealth of all the experience that you have. We've seen the alternate where someone comes in and, if anything, they pigeonholed the industry and They bring the red tape in there, and then the pissing matches start to happen.
Right.
Okay, and it's just like, for us, it's like what our driving thing is, going to what Constantine said earlier, is to revolutionize it, is to bring it in and to break into new creative ground where we're innovative, and it's a true complement to law enforcement.
Right.
Because we're not trying to replace it. We can really be a complement. Yeah, in some of the ways that you just said right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things too is when you're leaving from policing and going into the private sector. I've heard this many times over the last couple of years, is that a lot of people try to leave police and go into the private sector and they fail. And part of that reason is because they are coming into the private sector with the attitude that, I spent 30 years as a cop or 35 years as a cop, whatever. They want me here because of my background and who I was. And I'll just sit here and I'll collect my paycheck and I don't really have to work. I'm just here because of who I was.
Yeah.
That's not reality. Nobody's going to pay you just to sit there and do nothing.
Right.
The private sector, don't forget, is about what's the number one thing you do in the private sector? Is you're making money.
That's right.
It's revenue generating.
Yes.
And if you're not generating revenue, what value are you?
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So you got to generate revenue and you got to bring it in.
That's right.
Otherwise, you're of no value to a private sector company.
That's
When
good.
When I was in policing, I had no problem going to my boss and writing a request for funding for an investigation, and whatever that funding was, no problem, we'll sign it, and got the money.
Right.
I didn't have to go out and raise money.
Right.
I just asked for it.
Right.
And it was given to me.
Right.
Now I got to go out and I got to find the clients. I got to make the revenue. I got to make proposals and do all those
make
things.
it sustainable.
And make it sustainable.
Yeah.
Have the the right pay rates, have the right bill rates, have all those things in place, and know how to do it. And you can't just walk in thinking somebody's going to pay you to do nothing because of who you were. That's part of it. The reason I'm sitting where I am is because of who I was, but that's not it.
Exactly.
That got me to where I am.
Exactly.
But now I got to perform, otherwise I'm of no value.
So
Amazing.
basically, the wealth of that career, don't rest on it, share it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good.
Beautiful closing words.
Hey.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time, Stacy. Appreciate you, man. And let's look on for the next one.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that
guys.
was
All right.
awesome. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.
All right.
Pleasure.
All right.
Take care.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.